$2, Silas Cade said, and slapped the coin down on the auction table so hard the tin plates rattled. That's my offer for the tall one. The crowd laughed. Somebody in the back whistled low and mean. And Della Whitfield stood on that splintered crate with her hands knotted together in front of her, staring at the man who'd just bought her like a mule nobody else wanted, and she did not cry. She had promised herself a long time ago that she would not cry in front of strangers again. She was near 6 feet in her stocking feet, broad through the shoulders, with hands that had split kindling and hauled water since she was 8 years old, and every family that had come through that orphan train depot in Cheyenne had looked at her the way you'd look at a horse with a bad leg. Too big, too plain, too much woman for the frilly little dresses the other girls wore. Girls half her size who'd been picked within the hour, hugged and cried over, and led away to new mothers who called them precious. Della had stood there since sunup. The auctioneer, a sweating little man named Pruitt who ran these placements for the railroad charity, had practically been apologizing for her by noon, saying things like strong back, good for farm work, eats less than you'd think, like she was livestock at a county fair. And then this cowboy had walked up, tall himself, sun-browned, with a scar through one eyebrow and eyes the color of creek water in November. He hadn't smiled at her. He hadn't looked her over the way the others had, top to bottom, weighing her like beef. He'd just looked at her face, at her eyes, and something in his own face had gone strange and still, like he'd seen a ghost he half recognized. "Mister, you don't want that one," Pruitt said, already reaching to hand him one of the smaller girls instead, a wisp of a thing named Ruthie. "This here's a good worker, but well, she's a lot of girl for $2, that's the God's truth, but if you're wanting a wife." "I didn't say wife," Silas said. "I said I'm buying her contract. For my ranch. I need help, not a bride, and I'll thank you not to talk about her like she can't hear you." Della's chin came up an inch. Nobody had ever said that to Pruitt before. Nobody had ever said much of anything to Pruitt except thank you and please, take her, we'll manage. They rode out of Cheyenne in a wagon that smelled of hay and horse sweat, the sky over the Wyoming plains turning the color of a bruise as the sun dropped, and Della sat with her carpet bag on her knees and her spine straight as a fence post, waiting for him to say something cruel now that they were alone, the way men sometimes did once the crowd was gone. He didn't. He drove in silence for near an hour before he spoke at all. "You got a name," he said. "Or should I keep calling you the tall one, like Pruitt does?" Della Whitfield. Silas Cade. He didn't look at her when he said it, kept his eyes on the road, but his jaw worked like he was chewing on something bitter. "Whitfield," he said again, quiet, like he was testing the word. "That's a name I heard once, a long time back. It's a common enough name. Maybe." He didn't say more. The ranch, when they reached it in full dark, was smaller than she'd expected. A house with a sagging porch, a barn in better repair than the house, which told her plenty about what kind of man he was, and beyond it fields gone half wild with nobody to work them proper. There was an old woman on the porch with a shawl around her shoulders and a lamp in her hand, and when the wagon pulled up, she came down the steps slow, favoring one hip, and held the lamp up to Della's face. "Silas Cade," the old woman said, "what in the Lord's name have you brought home?" "Help, Ma Ruby. Just help. She's here to work the place, not to be stared at, so don't." Ma Ruby wasn't his mother, Della would learn later, but the woman who'd raised him after his own family scattered to the wind, and she had opinions about everything and shared most of them freely. But that first night, she only looked at Della a long moment, taking in the height of her, the plainness of her dress, the tired set of her shoulders, and then she said, "Well, coming out of the cold, girl, before you catch your death standing there looking like you expect me to bite you." That was the first kindness. Della hadn't expected one. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that surprised her with how little it hurt. She'd worked hard places before, 2 of them, families who'd taken her in for the free labor and reminded her every day she wasn't really wanted, wasn't really theirs, wasn't really anything but a pair of strong hands they'd gotten cheap. This was different in a way she couldn't name at first. Silas worked alongside her instead of over her. He didn't call her useless when she dropped the bucket, only handed her another one. And at supper, when Ma Ruby served up beans and cornbread, he waited until Della had her plate before he touched his own, which was a small thing, the kind of thing nobody would notice, except Della noticed everything. because noticing things and bracing for the worst was how she'd survived this long. It was on the fourth night that the tension between them cracked open into something sharper. "You watch me like I'm fixing to hit you," Silas said, out of nowhere, while they were mending fence in the last gray light of evening. "I've noticed it. Flinch if I move too quick." "What?" Della's hands stilled on the wire. "Maybe I've got reason to watch a man close." "Somebody hurt you." It wasn't a question. "Somebody hurt everybody," Della said, sharper than she meant to. "That's not news, Mr. Cade. That's just living. Don't call me Mr. like I bought you off a shelf." His voice had an edge now, too, the first real heat she'd heard from him. "I bought your labor for the season because I've got 200 head and no hands and a banknote coming due. Not because I wanted a thing to order around. You want to hate me for the way it looked back in town. You go on and hate me. But don't stand there and act like I'm the worst thing that ever happened to you when you don't know the first thing about what I've lost either." That stopped her. "What have you lost?" He looked away, out at the darkening fields, and for a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. "Everything," he said finally. "Once. Long time ago now." And he picked up the fencing tool and went back to work, and she understood she'd get no more than that. Not that night. She lay awake in the little room off the kitchen that Ma Ruby had fixed up for her, staring at the ceiling, and thought about the way he'd looked at her that first day, like he'd seen something in her face he recognized. She thought about the name Whitfield in his mouth, careful, like a man handling a hot coal. Weeks passed. The work hardened her hands further and softened something else in her that she'd thought was gone for good. She caught herself laughing at Ma Ruby's stories about Silas as a boy, catching frogs in his good church trousers, and she caught Silas watching her laugh with an expression on his face that she didn't have a name for and was afraid to guess at. One evening he taught her to shoot, standing behind her to correct her grip, and his hands on her hands were careful, so careful, like he thought she might shatter, and neither of them said anything about how long that lesson took or how little shooting actually happened. Then came the trouble. A man named Boone Kessler, who ran the biggest spread in the valley and had wanted Silas's water rights for 2 years running, showed up at the ranch on a Sunday with 2 of his men and an offer dressed up as a threat. "You're behind on that note, Cade. Everybody in town knows it," Kessler said from his horse, not bothering to get down, looking at the place like he already owned it. "Sell me the west section now, at my price, or the bank forecloses in 60 days and I buy the whole spread for less. Your choice. Though I don't figure it's much of a choice. Get off my land, Boone." "Your land." Kessler smiled, and his eyes slid over to where Della stood in the yard with a basket of wash on her hip, and something ugly came into his face. "Heard you bought yourself a giantess at the Orphan auction for $2. Cheap even for you. She do the plowing, or just stand around scaring the crows?" Della felt her face go hot, felt every old wound open up fresh, felt 14 years of being looked at like a joke rise up in her throat. And Silas didn't laugh, didn't flinch, didn't do any of the things men usually did when somebody made a cruelty into a joke to smooth things over. He walked 3 steps toward Kessler's horse, slow and deliberate, and his voice went very quiet, which somehow was worse than shouting. "You will not speak about her again," he said. "Not her name, not her size, not one word. You understand me? Because the next time you do, I won't be answering you with words." He looked up at Kessler, unblinking. "Now get off my land before I forget I'm supposed to be a peaceable man." Kessler left, but not before promising, with a smile, that 60 days would come faster than Silas thought. That night, Della found Silas sitting alone on the porch steps in the dark, a bottle of something beside him that he wasn't drinking, just holding. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I've heard worse. I've got thick skin." "I know you have. You've had to." He looked up at her, and in the lamp light from the window his face looked older than it had that morning. "But you shouldn't have had to build it that thick. Not for that. Not for being tall, or plain, or whatever fool reason people decide a person's worth less. My mother was tall too, taller than most men in the county. And when I was 9 years old I watched a room full of church women whisper behind their hands about how a woman built like that couldn't be a proper lady, and I watched it near break her, and I swore I'd never let another soul stand in front of me and take that kind of talk without answering for it." He turned the bottle in his hands. "Sit down, Della. There's something I ought to tell you, and I've been a coward about it for weeks." She sat. "My family didn't just scatter," he said. "We were split up. My pa died of the fever when I was 10, and my mother couldn't keep all 4 of us, not with no money and no kin nearby willing to help a widow with that many mouths. There was me, and there was my 2 younger brothers, and there was my baby sister. The county took us to a placement agency out of Cheyenne, same kind of outfit, near enough, that put you on that crate. I was old enough they let me go with my Ruby's late husband, who needed a hand on this ranch. My brothers went to a family out toward Laramie. And my sister, his voice actually caught, and he had to stop and start again. My sister was a baby, not even 2. They said a family took her clean out of state, and there were no papers kept proper, and I never found her again. I've spent near 20 years writing letters to agencies and asking every writer who comes through if they've heard of a Whitfield family that adopted a baby girl out of Cheyenne in the spring of. He stopped, looked at her, really looked at her, the way he had that first day on the auction crate, like he was afraid to finish a thought that had been circling him for weeks. My sister's name, he said, very carefully, was Della. The porch went silent except for the wind moving through the fence wire and somewhere far off a coyote calling. That's not. Della's voice didn't sound like her own. That's not an uncommon name. No, it's not. He was still looking at her. What do you know about your people, Della? Before the orphan homes? Before any of it? Nothing. Her hands were shaking now, and she pressed them flat against her knees to stop it. I don't remember. I was too small. They told me at the home in Omaha that I came to them from a family out west, a widow who couldn't keep all her children, and that's the whole of what I ever knew. I don't even know my true birthday. They gave me one. What month did they give you? March. What year? She told him, and he made a sound then that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. Some rough thing caught between the two, and he put his face in his hands for a long moment before he could speak again. That's the year my sister was born, he said. That's the month. It could be nothing. It could be 100 girls born that month that year. Della was gripping the porch rail now, hard, like the world had tilted. Silas, don't say a thing like that if you're not sure. Don't give me a family, and then take it back. I couldn't bear. I'm not sure, he said, and his voice broke clean open on the words. God help me. I'm not sure of anything except that the first time I saw your face on that crate in Cheyenne, something in me went quiet the way it hasn't gone quiet in 20 years, like I already knew you, and I've been telling myself for weeks it was foolishness, that I was seeing what I wanted to see because I've spent so long looking for her in every face I pass. But you're wearing your mother's exact eyes, Della. I'd know those eyes on any woman on this earth. I've been afraid to say it because if I'm wrong, I've done something unforgivable, and if I'm right. If you're right, what? If I'm right, then I brought my own sister home on a wagon and made her sleep in the back room and haul water for me for a month like a hired girl, and I am the sorriest excuse for a brother God ever put breath into. There was a long silence, and then, unbelievably, Della laughed. A wet, cracked, astonished laugh, the kind that comes when grief and joy get tangled too tight to pull apart. You paid $2 for your own sister, she said. $2, Silas. I'd have paid every cent I owned. I didn't know that's what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't let another man have you, and I didn't know why. They didn't sleep that night. Ma Ruby, woken by their voices, came out in her nightdress and stood in the doorway with her hand pressed to her mouth, and when she heard enough of it, she said there was a christening record. There had to be one. The county kept those things even when families didn't. And come morning, she would hitch the wagon herself and drive them both to the courthouse in Cheyenne if that's what it took to know the truth of it. It took 9 days. 9 days of waiting, of wiring the placement agency in Omaha, of an old clerk in Cheyenne digging through boxes of yellowed county records while Della stood at the counter gripping Silas's arm, so hard she left marks, both of them too afraid to hope out loud. And on the 9th day the clerk came back with a single page, brittle at the edges, and read out a name that undid them both where they stood. Della Mae Whitfield, born March the 11th, to Thomas and in Whitfield of Sweetwater County. Surviving siblings recorded at time of placement: Silas, age 10, Amos, age 7, Jacob, age 5. There's brothers, Della said, and her knees nearly went out from under her right there on the courthouse floor. I have brothers. We'll find them, Silas said, holding her up, his own face wet and not ashamed of it. I swear it to you. I found you. We'll find them too. 60 days came, as Kessler promised, but they came different than he'd planned. Word travels fast in a small valley, and the story of the cowboy who'd bought his lost sister off an auction crate for $2 spread through Sweetwater County like fire through dry grass. And men who'd never once helped Silas Cade with anything showed up at his door offering loans, offering labor, offering to speak to the bank on his behalf. Because there is something about a story like that which makes hard men remember they have hearts. The note got paid. Kessler got nothing but the sour knowledge that he'd mocked a woman who turned out to be kin to half the goodwill in the valley, and he never showed his face on that land again. Della stayed. Of course she stayed. She hung her one good dress in the room off the kitchen, and Ma Ruby took the pins out of it and let the hem down and said this was her home now, and she'd hear no more foolish talk about contracts or wages, because family didn't pay family. Family just stayed. On a spring evening near a year later, with the wheat coming up green in the west section and a letter on the kitchen table from an agency in Laramie that might have found a boy named Amos Whitfield working a spread 2 counties over, Della stood on the porch where she'd once sat listening to her brother confess the worst and best thing he'd ever done, and she thought about the crate in Cheyenne and the men who'd looked at her and seen nothing worth the price of a meal, and she thought that none of them, not one, could have imagined that being unwanted by everyone else in that yard was the exact thing that had led her home. She never did find out what happened to the $2. Silas kept the coin in a tin on the mantel, and some evenings she'd catch him looking at it instead of the fire, turning something over in his mind that he'd never quite say out loud, though she knew well enough what it was, because she thought it too, most nights, before sleep took her, that the cheapest thing that man ever bought turned out to be the only thing in his life he couldn't have paid enough for.